Hi, I'm Silver Johnson, and welcome to Story Jam. Today's Story Jam is our inaugural Story Jam, and we're talking about generosity with George Gruhn, founder of Gruhn Guitars, master engineer, and world-renowned brainiac historian about guitars. But we're going to talk about generosity. We've been chatting with George about his experiences with generosity, and so George, do you remember your first experience with generosity, or do you have a story about generosity you'd like to share?
Well, at age 80, I can't claim that I remember my first experience with generosity.
Okay.
But I can think back from when I was about 7 years old. I had a friend who lived nearby, but this was in Tuckahoe, New York, a suburb of New York City.
Okay.
I was born, or first place I lived, first 4 years, fourth floor walk up, Coldwater flat in Brooklyn, followed by, when I was 4, family moved to the Bronx. I was there 2 years. I remember back to even the first Coldwater flat and the playground. I don't remember a whole lot about generosity back then, although I do remember my first day in kindergarten. I hadn't been very well socialized because you going to the playground once a day and not playing with other kids and being more afraid of them than playing with them. So first day of kindergarten, I bit 2 kids, then hit on the teacher's desk. But what I do remember is the teacher was really nice to me, and she realized that I was bright and that I could be worked with, and she took a lot of extra time socializing me. And I really bonded with her very well. She didn't need to do that, but she wanted to, and that was a good thing for me.
That was very generous and kind of her to take the time.
When I was about 7, I had a friend who lived in Tuckahoe, and he and I got along pretty well. He wasn't a whole lot more socialized than me at the time, but we enjoyed going out. There were 3 lakes in walking distance, things still out. But our parents' father, 2 fathers, my father and his father, would alternate occasionally taking us out to the Long Island Sound, but for $10 for the day, you could get on a fishing boat. And they probably gave a good rate for kids. The kids might have even been free, I'm not sure. But since I'm 80, and this was been over 70 years ago, $10 was actually more like spending over 100 or closer to 200
right today
to go fishing effectively.
Right.
$10 was real money back then, but they provided the rods and the bait, all the bait you needed, and it would go fishing in the Long Island Sound. And my father managed pretty well on that, but his dad always got seasick. Every single time was just horribly seasick and would have to go below deck and just lay down and be miserably sick the whole time. But he still continued to take us kids out, alternating with my dad. So periodically the 2 kids could go fishing.
Well, that was really generous of him.
If you talk about generosity, that was generosity.
Absolutely.
That was really putting himself out for his son and for me.
Do you think he was maybe the first example you got, besides your teacher, of generosity and kindness?
I really remember that vividly.
Well,
how I knew he got sick every time, and he went out anyway to take us. But one thing that really shaped me in business as an example of generosity, I had met Tut Taylor, who became my first business partner for 9 months when we opened the store. But I met him in 1965 at the Nashville, North Carolina Fiddling Convention and got to know him a little bit. But a couple years later, '67 I was there, and I met a guy who I remember even his name. He went by the name of Pink as a nickname, but Callahan. And he had some instruments, and I didn't know anywhere remotely near as much then as I do now.
Mm-hmm.
But I had some pretty good instruments of my own, and I really wanted to get a pre-World War II F5 mandolin. And he had what he presented as being one. And it fooled me at the time. Now I would look at it and I'd know from 10 feet away at a glance it was a fake, but at any rate, back then I didn't, and I traded him 3 good instruments for his fake F5. And when I showed it to Tut and to Harry West, who were there, they looked at it after I'd already done the deal and informed me that I'd been taken, that this was an absolute fake and was really very little value. And I was just devastated because I traded some of my best pieces, and I was totally crushed. And this was a very, very big setback for me at that time. Well, Tut took sympathy on me. The guy lived in Morganton, North Carolina, about an hour drive from the festival, and he offered to take me. We drove to the local sheriff's there.
Oh, really?
And the sheriff said, well, there wasn't much he could do, and Tut got in the back room with him, and
back room, huh?
well, he was talking to the sheriff about good old boy redneck things and how he was a good old Georgia boy, and they got to talking all about the local problems, and including race relations down there, and Tut was confirmed redneck on race relations and all the problems they had with the local N-word. And at any rate, the sheriff liked him enough. He went and he retrieved the instruments. He took back the fake to Pink, and he told, because he also asked me, the sheriff asked me, if I was going to be a North Carolina resident, and I said, yes, I'm going to Duke, and I'm going to be around to testify if it comes down to it. So Tut convinced him that it would be a good idea to just go get those instruments back. And Tut took an entire day out of a 3-day festival to help me, who he knew a little bit, but not that well yet. As a result of that, I got to know Tut a whole lot better, and it ended up with the founding of Gruhn Guitars. Might not have taken the same path had it not been for Tut, because he was my business partner for, it was only 9 months. But that setup, that act of kindness that he showed to me changed in some ways the whole course of my life at that time. I might have given up on guitar dealing at all. I was so distraught with that whole thing. And
that's amazing.
he would not have been my business partner. Gruhn Guitars might not even exist today had it not been for that act of kindness that changed the course. And there's so many things, sometimes it seemed trivial at the time, but all that bit, just like the Robert Frost poem, The Fork in the Road, sometimes it seems very trivial, but every day, whether we know it or not, we are presented with options almost every moment.
Right.
And when you're behind the wheel of your car and you're doing something like going 60 miles an hour even, that's 88 feet a second. If you take your eye off the wheel or don't pay attention for even 1 second, bad things can happen. But the point is, you're making on the road things that are literally life and death decisions every moment. whether you realize it or not. Sitting right here, we're not making life and death decisions at each moment. But when you're on the road, especially if you're driving 80 or 90, ooh, yes, you are. But every day we have opportunities. And recognizing opportunities when you see them, that's really great.
Well, your friends and the people in your life that influenced you took the time to listen. Listening can be an act of generosity, and being kind enough to pay attention and listen and respect. But you were telling me about the golden rule, in your experience with the golden rule?
Well, in my opinion, the golden rule is the best rule of human conduct in business and personal relationships. And frankly, it's also very practical. So it does not have to involve religion to be equally useful.
No.
If you use the golden rule, in general, the outcome is going to be more consistently good, and you're going to feel better about what you do. It makes good endorphins flow, if you want to be biological about it, because a lot of the way we feel emotionally still does have to do with basic biochemistry.
Absolutely.
And when you do things that feel good, and generosity typically does feel good.
It does.
It makes both parties happier, but the fact is, if you treat people well, they're likely to tell friends about it, and maybe even refer business customers to you. If you treat them poorly and cheat them, they may not know at first that they've been cheated, but they will sooner or later figure it out. And when they do, not only will they not do business with you or be your friend, they're likely to tell a whole lot more people, and in this internet age, they have the ability to tell millions of people about it. And bad reviews online are very damaging. But bad treatment of others, in the old days, it still involved people having to switch identities and move around. And in the modern age, it does for some folks. You have to change identities. You're always looking over your shoulder or wondering who's following you because you cheated somebody, and you know.
Well, with all the followers on the internet.
Yeah, and down here in the South, if you cheat some people, they don't necessarily go to see the sheriff or try to try you in court. In these days of open carry and whatever, and before there was open carry, there was open carry anyway. In the long run, it doesn't really pay to cheat people. You make more money if you treat them well. If you treat them well, you get repeat customers. If you treat them poorly, you don't get repeat customers, and you end up having to move from one town to another to stay ahead of the people who you cheated and are looking for you. So honesty in business and in personal relationships ultimately leaves you the happiest and usually the most prosperous.
Well, and as we say at Giving Tuesday and with Be the People, generosity is a multiplier.
It is.
And it absolutely makes you feel good. There is a biochemical effect when you are giving in kind. And I personally feel like if we give until it feels like receiving, then we're giving out of the kindness of our heart and connecting to our communities in a way that we wouldn't necessarily connect if we chose not to be kind or generous. And I think, at your store, and in my experience, spending time here all the time and seeing you with people, you're always kind and generous and welcoming. And, sometimes we head out to lunch at 1 o'clock and we don't get out the door until 4 because you're being so kind and generous, talking to people that are sometimes just strangers, or sometimes it's Tommy Emmanuel or Vince or someone who some people would feel obliged to be kind to because of their star factor, but they're people and they're kind themselves.
Well, the other thing is I do lots of time with children. They may not have any money of their own to buy an instrument, but mommy and daddy do. And if you're nice to the kids, which I enjoy doing anyway, I show them the instruments. I talk to them if they're interested in zoology. I show them the snakes and the tortoise and the kitty. And so we can relate either through the animals or the instruments and the music. But there's been quite a few that I've met very young, like even my neighbor when I was living in Mount Juliet on the lake. The girl 2 doors down from me, 7 years old, was already playing guitar, and I encouraged her on that. And she's now playing professionally, and she's doing very well. We had lunch just a few days ago, and I got her and a boyfriend of hers backstage.
Oh, good.
At the Opry, and she already knew some of those people because she's been doing songwriting and playing around. Jack Schneider, who now accompanies Vince Gill and recently did a tour with Tommy Emmanuel. I met him at 15 years old, and I was very impressed with him. He'd come to the shop with his parents because he'd convinced them that he really wanted to come up here. He knew about the store, and I was impressed enough. I offered him internships for 2 summers in a row at the store. And I introduced him to Vince Gill. They hit it off really well.
Right.
And now he's played with Vince. He was with Gordon Lightfoot on a farewell tour for Gordon. And he's been an opening act for Ricky Skaggs on the road, and he's accompanied Vince on the road.
And he just played with Tommy Emmanuel?
He did 6 weeks of tour with Tommy. Tommy is a very generous person. And
well, I think you recognize, when I see you, I think you recognize the generous spirit and speak to the generous and kind spirit of the people that walk in the door. And I know, I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about your philosophy on the store as far as being an adoption agency, because that's what you call it. And
I view the instruments as being virtually alive. And the truly good ones, when you play them, do feel alive. But the guitars are sort of an ultimate work of art because you can look at them and visually the good ones are quite beautiful. Even when they're plain, the good ones have elegant lines. And just like a piece of Danish modern furniture, it doesn't have to be as fancy as Chippendale, but it still can be absolutely beautiful lines. A Stradivari or Del Gesù Guarneri violin are magnificent to behold. They're not fancy, but they're absolutely elegantly beautiful. And then with the instrument, you can not only see it, you can touch it. And the good ones conform to human anatomy to be played in such a way, they're ergonomically so finely designed that it is absolutely sensuous to just touch, feel them, and hold them. They feel alive.
well, don't you feel like they have stories to tell themselves?
Well, they have stories because they can last a long time.
Right.
Stradivari died in 1737, but there's still people playing them. And those instruments most certainly do have stories handing on down from one owner to another, the kinds of music that's been played on them over the years, often enough music that the original designers never intended or never thought of. Even symphonic music didn't exist when Stradivari and Guarneri were alive. There was chamber music, but nothing symphonic. But those instruments have been adaptable over the years for a wide variety of music. And even today, Leo Fender never envisioned people like James Burton or Roy Buchanan or Clapton or Hendrix. These are sounds that Leo never dreamed of. All of the Fender guitars in his lifetime were sent out with heavy flat wound strings, third wound string, and just they weren't set up for the kind of music that's being played on them now, but they're adaptable. You just put light strings on, you can do amazing things with them.
Okay.
But when you play an instrument, not only does it produce sound that an audience and the player can hear, but for the player, it's interactive. And you can feel the response of the instrument. There are some instruments that the audience thinks sound pretty good, but to the artist they're dull and they don't come up with any new ideas. They're not really a musical partner. They're a machine that will do, you do what you think, and it may do it pretty well, but it makes no suggestions, and it's rather blah personality. It's not very dynamic. But others that you play, they just are very responsive. They may be a bit quirky, and if you know anything about riding horses,
just a little bit,
you can have a very gentle saddle mare that is good for teaching your 8-year-old child how to ride, or you can have a high-spirited stallion that would be dangerous for your child, but would be really fun for you to ride. But you have to have skill to ride it, or bad things may happen. Well, some of the best instruments actually require skill. They're not dangerous if you don't know how, but some of the best instruments for a beginner, they don't know how to play it, and it's uncomfortable. A Del Gesù violin or a really good pre-war Martin set up for backup bluegrass is not comfortable for a beginner. The action's high. And if you set the action up super low, it may be physically comfortable, but they don't put out the dynamic range that they have with somewhat higher. Medium or high action is where a lot of the skilled acoustic players are playing, and Segovia sure as hell didn't play with low action on his guitars.
Probably not.
But classical or otherwise, super low action is not the best way to get great tone. It's a way to get comfort, but not necessarily the greatest tone. But when you have the right instrument, they feel vibrantly alive and they make suggestions, things that you might never have thought of otherwise. They become actually a musical partner, and they change your sound, and they even recommend things they would like to do, and you may be more creative. And there are examples. I don't think that James Burton would ever come up with the sounds he did if he were playing it on a hollow body jazz guitar. It wouldn't have worked. And if you put the super slinky strings on a hollow body jazz guitar, it still won't do that sound. So it needed to be something like a Telecaster to do that. And if you look at even what Paganini did on violin, he had demands on the violin to do his style music, the beginnings of symphonic type soloist work. There are no solo parts even in Mozart.
Well,
Paganini introduced a lot of that, but he had Viam in Paris, the greatest of the French violin builders. They hot-rodded those violins to do it, because the early Italian violins, all the violins had a shorter scale. A440 wasn't the standard pitch. They had a smaller bass bar, different design bridge, different design bow, no chin rest. All that came in with Viam hot-rodding violins for Paganini to do what he wanted. And it changed musical history. But he created music that was unlike anything that had ever been played on a violin. But it did involve some changes physically to hot-rod the violins to do it. Bill Monroe, when he got his F5 mandolin, didn't have to hot-rod anything. But he did play his mandolin with very high action. And he came up with sounds that you could do on the F5 that you could not do on the previous mandolin. But here's an F5, 1922, first year of issue, signed by Lloyd Lohr. Monroe's was a 23 model. But this was the ultimate Gibson mandolin, designed in 22 to be an orchestral soloist instrument, to play in a mandolin orchestra. But Monroe came up with chopped chords and a style of playing that had never been done on mandolin before. I can't demonstrate it to do it the way Monroe did, but I can do a few chopped chords, and it does things that previous mandolins could do. Tremolo and do pretty tunes, but they was doing.
Right.
Drive the rhythm for a 5-piece band. And
Pretty
without
cool.
this type mandolin, this mandolin in its day, pre-World War II, was the only model mandolin that could do that type sound. And it changed the whole history of music. Bluegrass would not exist today if it were not for the F5 mandolin.
Well, that's pretty huge, big story about generosity from all aspects, and as you so beautifully put it, there are no solo parts to generosity. Before we sign off, do you have another story of generosity that's more recent that impacted you as much as Mutt's generous spirit towards you in the first part of your career at Gruhn Guitars?
Well, early on, there were plenty of people who helped me. I didn't get where I am now without help. And even learning about guitars at the beginning, back in the 1960s, when I was starting to collect instruments, there were no books about them, no serial number lists available, not even any articles that were very comprehensive. First one I ever saw was in the mid-60s, right around 1965, the Denver Folklore Center had an annual almanac, and it had a 2-page article by John Lundberg, which included a Martin serial number list. I'd never seen such a list before. But what did help me is there were people who were old enough that they remembered the pre-war period very well. Here today, I'm 80. And 50 years ago doesn't even seem all that old to me. That was 1976. I remember it just fine. Well, there were people who back then were in their 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. And in 1963, when I started to collect instruments, there were people like, I remember a guy, Joe Kelly, who worked at Kagan Gaines Music. He told me a lot of things about his memories of things like the Larson Brothers, and the Larson Brothers went out of business in 1944. Well, in 1944 was, that wasn't that many years, because 1960, 63, 30 years previous would be 33. Mm-hmm. So the Larson Brothers were vividly clear in his memory. And even dealing older Martin and Gibson guitars, he was there remembering very well what was going on when those instruments were new. Because to him, these were used guitars. And you have to figure, when I opened up my store in 1970, 30 years previous, it was 1940.
Right.
There were still plenty of older folks that I could learn from. And a lot of these people took time to talk to me, even when I was still a college student, wanting to learn. The way I learned was from the generosity of people older than me who took the time for no compensation other than just talking to me and getting to know me a bit. They took time to teach me, or at least tell me, relate stories, and give me pointers on where I could go maybe to learn more, introducing me to other folks who were around at the time. And I try to do the same thing today. And when student groups come around or parents come in with their kids, if that child is interested, they may be only 8 or 10 years old, but some of those kids are very bright and ask very intelligent questions. Many adults greatly underestimate the intelligence of children. They somehow think that just because they're little kids, that they're not as smart as we are. They're wrong. Children can simultaneously learn 3 different languages with no accent, speak fluently, and you can even meet 4-year-old children who are quite articulate. And they can be articulate in as many as 3 languages and speak each one of those languages better than a college student who learns a new foreign language and takes 4 years of college courses in that language. They still don't speak it as well as a 4-year-old native speaker. And those 4-year-old native speakers didn't learn it by taking grammar lessons or studying declensions and all of the, especially in some of those languages, all the different forms that the kids, 4-year-olds, speak fluent French, German, Italian, Japanese, whatever it is, Chinese. We have a hard time learning Chinese. Young kids don't.
No.
They can speak Thai, which has something like 8 tones.
Yeah.
And
very musical language.
Yes.
Very musical language.
The point is, children are smart, and I take the time with children who are interested if they come in with their parents, because obviously 10-year-olds don't come in unaccompanied on
Obviously
their own.
not. Obviously not.
Or if they did and stole the car, they don't do that.
I have some stories about some 12-year-olds that,
Yes, I know some
driving and flying planes that they weren't supposed to be flying.
Yes, I know that it happens. There are 8-year-olds. There are 8-year-olds who know how to drive a car because they live on a farm and Daddy taught them how to drive the tractor. That may not be the best of things to teach your kids, but
it made you a safer driver on the multi-generational. And it doesn't die with generations. It's not something a generation has to make up for the next generation. It is a gift that keeps on giving, and you pass it on. And I thank George Gruhn today for taking so much time, for being generous with his time, his stories, his beautiful guitars, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, George.
One of the things that is my main function in the business these days is just coming in and doing fun stuff.
I know. It's totally fun.
Eric is the company president and general manager, and I've already given him the shares of the business. I own the building, but I don't own the business at this point, technically. Now, I'm still
So you're guest in your own home.
Yeah, that's true, except I get to do what I want.
I know, it's really great.
So I don't technically own the business, but I can do every single function I ever did, except that I choose to delegate the management of the business to Eric.
Well, so you can have a good time
In
with your
fact,
guitars and
what
being
he's
generous.
doing is he's doing stuff that he loves to do. He's a wonderful manager, and I never did like that part of the business. I just like doing fun stuff. I like to buy more than I like to sell, although I do like selling.
Well, yeah, because then you could buy more. It's like this wonderful circle
It's
here.
an adoption agency. We have said that the great guitars feel alive.
Yep.
And that is one of the great distinguishing features between great guitars and just good utility tools. Utility tools do not inspire anything new, but the great ones do. An example, can't remember his last name. Rory Burke.
Okay, that's
Rory
right.
Burke.
Yeah.
Songwriter who was very successful, now deceased, unfortunately, but he used to come in regularly during the 70s and into the 80s. And the first time he came in, he sat down and he played about a dozen guitars, selected one, and back then it was just like $300.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still a good guitar. This was in the early 70s. And he played it and liked it, took it home. Well, about 3 months later, he was back with it and wanted to played another dozen guitars and wanted to trade the other one back in. And the one he picked out was no better. It was a similar price, but he'd pay me $100. He'd trade in his, and I made a little bit of money each time he traded, because he'd get one that was worth no more, and I'd get $100 to $200 difference. Well, he did this. 3 months later, he was back again. Did it. And after he'd done that about half a dozen times, I said, Rory, you know, I love it. Every time you come in, I make $100 or $200 on you, and that's all good, but how is it that I can't satisfy you with a guitar that you want to keep? And he says, George, you just don't understand. I'm a songwriter. I buy a guitar and I play it until there's no more new tunes in it for me. And then at that point, I trade it back, but I play the guitars until I hear one that has new tunes in it. It's a different personality. And the fact is, guitars are musical partners, and what one guitar inspires you,
right.
Different tones, different personalities, and he would trade for something that inspired new tunes, and he kept doing it and doing it and doing it, and that whole time he was churning out music like a machine, and it was hit after hit that he had. He was doing just fine. The amount of money he was spending on the guitars was piddly compared to what he was making. But Norman Blake had a different approach. He did buy guitars frequently, and I'm still doing business with him. He's 87 years old, but I'm still doing business with him. And occasionally he'll get something from me, but lately more often he's just consigning one to me, but I'm still, some go to him. But the thing is, he would play something and he'd have a favorite for maybe even a year or 6 months. He'd be just playing this same guitar, just playing, having a great time with it. And then he'd stick it in the closet and find a different one. And he didn't trade them, he kept them. And he just put it in the closet, and then when he was getting nothing more new out of it, he'd go back through the closet and play things. And you know what happens to them when they sit in the closet for a year? They regenerate tunes.
There you go.
If you start going and going and
Have
going
conversations with each other in the closet, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
And so he had effectively a harem of guitars.
Absolutely.
People often ask me, what's my favorite guitar? And I say, well, I have one wife, but I have a harem. I prefer a harem of guitars. Now, right now, my wife died after 10 years of Alzheimer's, but I do have a new girlfriend.
Yes, you do.
And But
News stories.
I don't have multiple girlfriends.
No, just one.
See, you can have multiple guitars and they don't fight with each other. They get along well, and you can even put some up and put them aside for a while and come back to them. But nothing bad happens by having a family of guitars.
No, absolutely not.
And the other thing about guitars is there's so many different kinds of guitars that really do have different
Blondes,
personalities.
brunettes, redheads.
If you look around the room here, you see flat-top steel string guitars, but in Martins you have dreadnoughts and you have the smaller
Exactly.
sizes. The smaller size ones are better for blues and finger picking. The big ones are better for flat picking for bluegrass style. But then you have arch-top F-hole guitars, like, this thing here. That don't look like a Martin.
No, it's not.
And it's designed for stuff that is not what Martins do.
No.
But so you can
It's a
have
Gibson.
all of these multi-different talents. And so these are my harem. They are the multiple guitar family. They all get along well, but any session player needs more than just one guitar unless he's playing only one style of music. But this guitar was not designed to be played simply for sitting around playing pretty lullabies at home. This was designed for orchestral rhythm.
Certainly does. Project story.
That's maybe kind of dynamic for playing just sitting here, but if you're in a 12-piece band with horns
Exactly.
and drums and piano,
You need to be heard. You need to stand out.
this can do rhythm.
Yeah.
And typically the rhythm players were just doing chord rhythm and they were not playing lead because the lead on guitar is just not loud enough acoustically to be in a 12-piece brass band. But Count Basie's band with Freddie Green on guitar, yep, he was playing on an F-hole archtop, and they were designed for that. This was Gibson's most expensive model guitar when it was introduced in '24, and this one was made in '33, but this is just like Eddie Lang's guitar, the father of modern jazz, and it looks just like Maybelle Carter's guitar with the exception it has block inlays and hers had dots. The dot inlay stopped at the late '29, very late, and for a while some had dots and some had blocks, but by 1930 they were block inlays. But Maybelle Carter played one of these, and she did it with a thumb pick and finger pick. From me.
Okay.
A lot of people come in and their kids want to play guitar, but they're sort of struggling. They're taking some lessons and they're not enjoying it. And it's often said that how do you keep kids interested? And they have all these different fancy teaching methods, how to keep kids interested. And they say, well, kids have a short attention span and you got to somehow get their attention. One, it's not true that kids have a short attention span. They have a short attention span for things that they don't like.
True.
And for things that are uncomfortable. And the trouble with too many beginner guitars is they're not set up well, and the really cheap ones don't sound good. They're irritating and terrible sounding. It's not going to be fun for a kid to learn on a guitar that doesn't sound good. It doesn't have to sound marvelous, but it has to at least sound capable of some decent sounds that are not irritating, and it should be physically comfortable to play.
Sure.
Now the student guitars now, with made a lot of CNC equipment, computer numeric control, they actually have accurate intonation, decent neck contour, and you can set them up well, but it has to be set up well or it hurts their tender little fingers. And if it hurts their hands, to the point they feel like their fingers are going to bleed. And if the sound is bad, they're going to quit. And if you couple that with rote memorization exercises and music theory, they don't like that. That's not the way kids learn to talk.
So what's the generous part? Was it
I show them the 2-minute guitar lesson to get them started.
Okay, do you have that
And
in your repertoire right now?
this is something here it is. The key of C is the easiest key. C, E7, F, not this F, but that F.
That F is easier to play.
And then you learn the 3 chords and switch them. If you do that, you can actually accompany yourself singing a tune.
Sure.
But if you do alternating basses to make it more interesting, step to do that. And the next thing is you're going to hammer-ons. Pull-offs. So hammer-ons, you hit them. The other is the reverse.
I'm sure that inspires them.
And then one more thing. If you can do that, you can actually play melodies. If you can hear. You can hear the chord changes. You can figure it out. And I taught one beginner class in 1965. The local music store near the school called me, offered me $10 because the music teacher was out sick. And that was worth more than 100 of today's dollars in 1965. Prices were cheap. But I taught a class. I got in, said, "Hi kids, Carmi's out sick today. I'm here, I'm George, and I'm going to fill in. Show me what you've been doing." And they showed me these pretty little finger-picking arpeggios that I didn't know how to do. I'd only been playing for 2 years, but I could do the stuff I do.
Yeah.
So I said, "Have any of you ever used a flat pick?" And they said, "Nope." Well, so we got out, because what I was doing is a little harder than learning a flat pick. So Maybelle Carter used a thumb pick and one finger pick, but flat pick. I showed them, they'd never used one. I showed them, here's how you hold it, and it does make a difference how you hold it.
Right.
And you can do the same thing. So we get up 10 kids, 10 flat picks. I showed them. They already knew those chords, but they'd never done alternating basses. They'd only done finger picking. So I showed them alternating basses, hammer-ons, pull-off, and they already do a scale. I asked them if they'd ever been shown how you could just pick out tunes on your own and compose. Nope, never had. At the end of a 1-hour session, 6 out of those 10 kids were picking out melodies on their own by ear of tunes they knew, and were even starting to compose tunes in 1 hour. And these were kids who'd been playing for less than 6 months.
Well, that was very generous of you, George.
So it showed, but this is something, when I get student kid groups, I show them this. So I'm still spreading the word on, here's the 2 minutes lesson. lesson right there.
Yay! Well,
If
that's
you can do that much, you can play guitar by ear, and that's enough to get them hooked. Once they get that, then they're having fun. And if you can make it from a boring rote memorization, I've seen kids who've been playing for a year who had never been taught how to play a single tune. They've never done anything that accompanied themselves. They'd never done anything creative on it. It had never been shown to them that you too can hear a tune and play it, and that you can even compose a tune. Absolutely never. I had lessons, music lessons, when I was in junior high. I played cello in the school the orchestra. Well, they didn't teach us. They taught us where to put your finger when you see that note. They never in any way taught us how to compose anything, how to play. If we hear a tune that we like, that you could learn how to play it yourself. Not a bit of that. But what I showed in 2 minutes, you can do this, and that's what it takes to get kids started. And then after that, they can sit around and play with others. And if they jam with others, especially others who know a bit more than they do, that's how children learn to talk. It's also how good players evolve as children, where you can see some who are 6 and 7 years old who play very well and have not had a bunch of formal training. They've just been exposed to it. Somebody will show them how to start, something like I did, and after that, they're on their own. And they can sit and play with others who are a notch over them, and they learn by doing the same way they learn to talk.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for today. It's amazing what 2 minutes of generosity will do for humanity, and we just want to thank generous George Gruhn and Gruhn Guitars for taking so much time today to talk to us about generosity. I want to thank Giving Tuesday and Be the People. Really appreciate it, and absolutely generosity is a multiplier. And we'll see you next time when hopefully George will join us again with Paul Worley, and Paul and George have a great story about generosity that we'll fill you in on next time.